What is up? It's the Cash Game Show. We're talking NFL cash games, and I'm here with Bryce, third and Schlong, and we're talking about the news that just broke. Devante Adams is out. He does not. It's a hamstring issue, but he doesn't want to play football. That's just it. He wants to be traded. He wants to be with Aaron Rodgers, probably, but it is what it is. But we're gonna talk about the cash games and what we're gonna do, and that was not a game that I was thinking we would talk much about. That's in the late window, but it's clearly a super relevant game now. We'll discuss it as we go position by position. But Bryce, how are things going for you? Happy to be back and out of Italy and not watching football in another country.
Yeah, we get real football back. None of that European bullshit. So I'm definitely happy to be back. Ready to watch 48 hours of football this weekend. Just got off the cat show. So, kind of surprising that Adams is going to sit, but also not at the same time. Like, he's definitely not happy in Oakland.
Yeah, he's definitely not happy. I mean, I'm sure you heard the coach, Antonio Pierce, said some guys made business decisions, and I don't know if it was defensive back or I thought it was probably Adams, and then people were telling me it wasn't Adams. It looks like it was Adams. So not surprising at all. He was even on Kay Adams' show, and he was like, I'm sick and tired of everyone saying that I don't want to play football for this team. Every week I have to say how much I love the logo and I love the Raiders. And, now he's sitting this week. So just not surprised at all. But that'll be a big talking point here on the Cash Show. And there's a lot of interesting things on this show. I mean, it's a 12-game slate, and we got a couple key games. Like the Philadelphia situation is one that we're definitely monitoring. That'll be a big game with them against Tampa Bay. What else here? The other one that's a big one is Washington and Arizona. That's definitely going to be a key one that I'm going to want to talk a lot about. We'll probably kick it off at quarterback with that. But Bryce, what are some of the games that you're looking at?
Sorry about that. I thought I was on mute. We can kick it off with that game.
I'm saying, like, what games do you like? Like, what are the ones I guess you're
that game
towards? Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind. CJ Stroud seems good to me on FanDuel. He's like super cheap. That's a huge price discrepancy. Like, he's the most expensive quarterback on DraftKings, and third most expensive quarterback on DraftKings, and just like below 8K on FanDuel is kind of interesting to me. Kind of a close decision to make there, though. You got Jaden Daniels sitting right there. Kyler is priced up a bit. So I kind of prefer to play like Kyler on DraftKings and then like get to either Daniels or Stroud on FanDuel was kind of my first lean. I want to see how the builds shake out, but those are kind of the three guys I'm looking at this week. I don't think you need to go cheap personally. We have some value this week. I don't think it's a week to punt quarterback. Not really sure where you lean on that, but like who's popping? Like Justin Fields, I don't want to play. Like, I think that game is going to be like pretty ugly. Like Caleb Williams, I don't really want to play. Like, I think Andy Dalton would be my guy, but against like the Cincinnati defense, but like I don't really trust Andy Dalton still. Like, I know he had a really good game last week, but I think there's better ways to get exposure on the slate.
Yeah, so like one thing you'll notice, and this just happens to the quarterback position a lot, is like a Justin Fields will pop if he's just not priced up enough, because the gap in quarterback projection, it's just not that wide, right? Like most quarterbacks project for basically above like 15. And then like the highest one is like maybe at like, 23 most weeks. Now this week, Kyler, I'm noticing on Saber has a 24, and that's because he's a runner. He's playing against Washington. Like, it's definitely like a dream matchup. It's also a 51.5 total. Like, Kyler looks like the guy to me. I don't mind Daniels as well. I think he's a pretty solid play, like you mentioned. I know we've considered, because we've had salary. We've put Pat Mahomes in there. I don't see him as a great option this week. I don't love Jalen Hurts either. It really feels like it's just right now, I'm either picking Murray or I'm picking Daniels, or I'm going to like punt if it just helps my full build. And if I do punt for the full build, I'm with you, Bryce. I don't want to play Justin Fields, but if you told me I was punting, I'd probably play Justin Fields, mainly because he's playing against the Colts. And I get it. It's not because I love the spot. It's just like, hey, it's because of what it would do for my full lineup.
The other thing to consider is I'm not expecting Jalen Warren to play. Like, I'm not going to skip ahead. I think we're pretty done with quarterback. I don't want to play Fields and Harris together. Like, that's just too much of a crappy offense to me. Like,
Agree.
because I'm expecting we saw Mixon back in practice today. So that kind of takes Cam Akers out of the equation. I'm assuming Mixon plays and Warren sits for just this show. Like, I mean, obviously we'll have more news and that can obviously change, but like Harris becomes like my preferred, like cheaper running back. So like, I think that's too much Steelers exposure personally. Like, I don't necessarily worry about that too much if it's a game I love. Like, if you told me that like you were playing Kyler and Connors together, like I'm totally fine just like essentially trying to get all the touchdowns, which is what you're doing. Now, if it's a crappy team like the Steelers in like a pretty bad scoring environment, I know Indy's defense is pretty horrible, but you know, both these teams are going to milk clock and keep the ball on the ground, you know, as much as they can. So like that's just too much Steelers for me. I think it's too big of a risk. So yeah, just a note on Fields there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Let's go to running back. And Cam Akers is currently the highest projected ownership guy, but you mentioned Mixon being back in practice. That's obviously going to shift some stuff. He's 5,300, and if people are playing that value, where's it going to go? It could go to Najee Harris. I agree on that, Bryce. I think it could go to Chuba Hubbard a little bit too. I think a lot of people are just not high on the Cincinnati defense right now and are willing to play guys. And with Andy Dalton running more of an efficient offense and recency bias, I do think Chuba Hubbard at 5.7K is going to be someone that pops and people play. Now, are we going to play it? That's the question. I don't know if I'm super excited about that. I do think there'll be a decision point. Do you play Najee or do you play Hubbard? Then Jordan Mason at 6'7". It's clearly a good spot for him. Yes, Patriots don't have a bad defense, but they're at home. They're 8-point favorites. It just fits like the math of a good running back play at 6.7K. Going to get all the volume to himself. Bijan Robinson, not the worst option at 7.4 that you could spend up on. Obviously, Kyron Williams is another guy that we should discuss with the volume that he's seeing in this offense, and he's going to get some passes as well. Brian Robinson Jr., he's another guy we should discuss going up against Arizona. I mean, this isn't like a super clear running back week, right? There's tons of options to discuss here, Bryce. So what's your thoughts?
I think the only super clear one is Breece Hall at 8K on FanDuel. Just way too cheap, in my opinion. I don't see a world where I don't play him this week. DraftKings, it's going to be more of a decision. You know, he's priced up at 7.8K. Like, he is a really good receiver out of the backfield. You know, DraftKings obviously prioritizes that. And I do like him, but he's not like a lock or anything. He would be my preferred running back spend. Like with the guys in the 7K range. I would rank them Breece, Bijan, then Kyron personally, with like a gap in between Breece. Like Breece would be 1, and then like Bijan would be like 2A, and Kyron would be like 2B for me. But I think all three are super solid options. In terms of Mason, I don't think anyone plays him on FanDuel I think what people end up doing is they play Mason on DraftKings and skip him on FanDuel just because like you get him for 6.7K on DraftKings and you know you're paying 8.8 on FanDuel. Obviously, he plays better with FanDuel's scoring system, you know, with the 100-yard rushing bonus, you know, catches are only half. He doesn't really catch the ball. Like he's getting most of his yardage like on the ground, obviously, in this offense. So that being said, I think 6.7K is too cheap for him, and he would rank as like my favorite running back per dollar this week on DraftKings. Getting off the studs a bit, you know, you get down to Brian Robinson. I'm a little worried that like he kind of stays in the same role even with Eckler out, and you know, just because he's not like a huge pass catcher. But you know that game is obviously a game you want exposure to, and you know getting Washington and Arizona players into your lineup is a priority. So I definitely like him. Getting into the cheap guys, you know, I need a little more time to look at the Najee stuff. You know, because I was kind of expecting to play Akers until like this afternoon when Mixon was practicing. But if Mixon is out, I'd rather play Akers over Najee and Chuba. If Mixon's in, that obviously takes Akers off the table, and then I would rank them Najee, then Chuba. But that pretty much is the cash pool for me. I guess you could make an argument for someone like Kamara or Connor, or even Saquon, have been so good. I think those guys are like really solid tournament plays, but I think the other guys are better in cash. So I do think it's a 3 running back in cash week. I get answered that question, or I get asked that question all the time. It's normally 3 running backs, and then especially on DraftKings, you can swap to a 4th receiver if like your team's not doing well or whatever. But yeah, I think it's 3 running backs right now.
Yeah, I agree. I do wonder if this Raiders stuff might open that up because there's some good receiver values that we'll discuss here in a second. So for one, like Terry McLaurin looks like a great play, right? He's won that Monday Night Football game happened, so the pricing was already out. It's in the best game of the slate. He's clearly wide receiver 1 on that team. 5.8K is a great price. Rashee Rice, he's 7.3K. It's clearly a great role that he's in without Isaiah Pacheco. They're going to use him as an extension of the run game, so those PPR points are going to be valuable. Nico Collins or a Stephon Diggs, you can make a case for that with Tank Dell being out, right? Those guys could be in the conversation. I think Deontay Johnson's role is really good without Adam Thielen. So he's someone that we should discuss going up against the Bengals. As crazy as it sounds, might be playing 2 Panthers in cash this week, or at least thinking about it. So they're obviously in play. You can make a case for these Arizona values as well. And I mean, now we have opportunity with the Raiders, right? We could have a Jacoby Myers as a value to play at the receiver position. I mean, there's a lot going on here for sure. And we still don't have all the injuries, right? More could come as well, Bryce. So, what is your overall thoughts here on these wide receivers that we got going on? Because again, there's a ton of good options, and I don't think it's crazy to see 4 receivers happen.
Yeah, I kind of want to see how this Raiders value shakes out a bit. I was struggling to find like some value because I do really want to get Nico Collins in your lineups this week. That's kind of a priority for me on both sides.
I mean, Nico's a priority on both sides. Okay, the reason why I cut you off there is like I could see a lot of people like being split because I thought Rashee Rice could be the priority, right? And it's like they're both like just really good plays. And then when you have McLaurin, and obviously you just can't get every single receiver, or you have to punt your running backs. Like this is where it gets interesting because we have Deontay, we have the Jacoby Myers stuff that just opened up, and I doubt people are playing Trey Tucker at 3.6. But the point I'm getting at is like you said that Nico's a priority for you, and I was thinking that Rashee was going to be a priority. So it's definitely.
Well, there's a world in which you can get both. Like if you go down to like 2 cheap running backs, I definitely think it's doable. I do like Rashee Rice too. I like Nico a bit more. So that's kind of where I'm ending up now. Like I'd rank them like 1A Nico, like 1B Rashee. It's kind of crazy to be having this discussion now. Like if you told me at the start of the season, I was like debating between those 2 for like receiver 1s, I would have been like, oh, this is like your receiver like 2 type of deal. But that just shows you how good these guys have been this year. And I am expecting, I think Houston's offense has more overall success than Kansas City's offense. It's kind of the tiebreaker for me right now between the 2. After Nico, I want Deontay Johnson. I think he's too cheap. Andy Dalton seems to love him. It's a really good matchup. You saw what Washington did to Cincy earlier. Their defense is just not any good. Guys in the middle that kind of fall in here. Diggs is definitely in play. I think it's okay to play 2 Houston receivers here. I really like their offense. I would like it a little bit more if Mixon was out, just because they skew so pass heavy without Mixon. I think Godwin is in play here. He's just been really good this year. Philly's secondary is absolutely awful. This new offense is really good for him. So I like him a bit. Ayuk, I think is in play. I like him a little bit less with Kittle back. I'm still expecting Debo to sit. But, he's still, I think, the alpha receiver and should get up to speed. We saw Jennings have a huge game last week. Like, Purdy's still going to put up numbers. Don't mind him. Marvin Harrison Jr. and McLaurin. We can talk about the guys in our favorite game for a second. I just wish they were a little cheaper. It's a little hard to get to Marvin this week, and it could be wrong for playing Nico and Rasheed over him, but I just think they have a better floor even in this game environment.
Keep on, there's no Trey McBride, Bryce, which we should mention.
Yeah,
that is going to matter.
I don't really. And where do his targets go? Is the thing. Like, I don't think they go to a tight end. So when I get into the cheaper guys, I mean, I guess I can do it now. I like Greg Dortch some. Yeah. I kind of think he might take like that, like shorter to mid, like range passing. So, yes. I think he's one of my favorite cheap options this week. I'm not sure how big of a boost Marvin sees without McBride. I think it's more of like their secondary players because like he's still going to be doing his thing. Like, I don't think they run him on like I don't think his ADOT lowers this week. I think like other guys just kind of step into the McBride, not role, but like short to mid range passing game. So I just don't think that really helps Marv this week. I like McLaurin in this game for the price. I think he's a better play on DraftKings, like just price relative at 5,800. I think that's much more palatable than like, he's 65 on FanDuel. Like, I mean, are you going to play him over like Deontay Johnson? I mean, maybe. Like, I think getting like into these 7K guys would be my preferred route, but I think McLaurin's definitely in play here. And then, for the cheap guys, Myers opens up. I think, he's relatively a much better play on FanDuel than DraftKings. Like, just with pricing, he's only 5,400 on FanDuel. Lets you do a lot with the rest of your team. We talked about Dortch already. I don't really see tons there. Trey Tucker at 3.6K, I think is interesting. Obviously, he's a little more boom or bust than you'd want. I think Jonathan Mingo is kind of the guy for me in the 3K range on DraftKings. And, I would be okay playing him with Deontay Johnson here. Don't love having two Panthers in your lineup, but it does a lot to save money elsewhere. And, I do kind of like their outlook this week for the price. This is kind of why I didn't want to play like Dalton or Fields at quarterback, just because like, oh, you get a cheap Pittsburgh guy. Oh, you get cheap Carolina guys. Like, I don't really want to go all in on, say, the Pittsburgh or the Carolina offense.
I totally understand that. And there's clearly, you mentioned a lot of the values that I for the most part, had any interest in, but there's a lot of ways you can go. It feels like it's like going to be like, and I mean, most weeks are like, it's like a puzzle, right? Trying to put it together, what makes the most sense based on the pricing. And, we'll be in the Discord chat. Obviously we'll tag the playbook with everything. Also, a couple people in the chat, Rance was wondering where the college football show is, just like TJ from Slack, who, TJ, you got to upgrade to Discord. First of all, let's get off of Slack. It's been too long. And then the college football show, it's a premium show today. So if you are looking for it, you use that code RPS15 and get you 15% off. And of course, if you guys could too, hit that like for us, we would appreciate it. But yeah, we saw in the chat too, Cruz said, what about Bowers instead of the receivers? It was a good transition to talk about that, because that's a great way to get exposure to Oakland right now. The question is, do we want Bowers or do we want another option? I mean, I think Dallas Goedert is in play, even with Devonta Smith likely in. But I mean, Dallas Goedert's role is still good at 5.1K, and he's 500 less than Brock Bowers. So I think he's in play. Brock Bowers will pop a lot, though. I definitely like him as an option. You could make a case that a Zach Ertz could pop up as a value or one of these guys. But for me, I think it's going to be a firm decision point on, do I go Goddard or do I go Bowers? Or do I punt all the way down to an Elijah Higgins? That's kind of my decision point right now. What about you, Bryce?
Have you seen Goddard's price on FanDuel? It's one of the craziest things. I opened to make my dummy team 7,500.
Yeah, they do that sometimes.
6,400. Yeah, after someone has like a monster game, they just like absolutely jack up their price. Like, you shouldn't play Goddard on FanDuel. I would I think the most expensive tight end I would play on FanDuel, and it's always easier to spend for tight end on FanDuel just because their pricing is a little like easier. It's kind of an A or B decision for me on FanDuel, to be honest. Bowers and Ertz are like my two guys. Like you get Bowers at 6'5", which I think is way too cheap with the Devante Adams news, and then you get Ertz. It gets you exposure to that game. He's only 5.1K. I just think it's a really solid play here. Moving over to DraftKings, their pricing algorithm, brings the other guys like more into play. Like, you're getting Ertz for 4K. Like that's not like a punt price on a tight end at DraftKings. Goddard comes into the equation at 5'1" when you have Bowers at 5'6". I need to look a little more at that based on some injury news, but I'll be able to hammer that out for you guys on the site. With our rankings and tags and whatnot. So I think that's a pretty interesting decision point. I would lean Goddard just because of the game environment. Like I'm a little worried that this Vegas game is just going to be like an absolute like slop fest. But Adams out creates a huge hole in that offense. So I think Bowers is one of the guys that's definitely primed to take advantage of it. I think that one's super close. I would rather get exposure to him on FanDuel just because like I find myself like just going through builds here, like really having the punt tight end. I think Elijah Higgins is my preferred punt tight end. Interesting note on Higgins. He's a receiver on FanDuel and he's a tight end on DraftKings. So like that kind of like makes that decision more like, oh, you're playing Bowers or you're playing Ertz for me on FanDuel. But like, I think DraftKings really does bring Higgins into the equation. I know we talked about Dortch going on some of these shorter routes, but I do think that Higgins plays like 70, 80% of snaps here. Like, I think he's going to be on the field and, simply being on the field enough, filling a position that's hard to fill is good enough for me, and being free. Lets you do a lot with the rest of your offense. We were talking about like wanting to pay up for some of these running backs, wanting to pay up for some of these receivers. Well, and not punting quarterback. This is how you do it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there. Don't have too much else to say at tight end. I think it's clear cut. You just have to make decisions on it, right? Look at the price points, look at the 2v2s, 3v3s. We'll answer those in Discord and everything like that. And those are going to be the big decision points here on this slate. We don't really talk too much defenses, but let's pull it up. Let's see if there's anything glaring at defense that should be mentioned. I never look super deep at defense or care to look that much at defense, but Texans are projected on Sabre to be the highest owned defense right now at 3K, and I'll admit I don't feel great about that. I don't see any defense that really sticks out to me as an amazing play, Bryce. And if I need to save it defense, that makes me feel okay to punt if I need to punt, or at least go cheaper. But what's your thoughts here on the defenses?
It's the same as any week. Like when we're on the show, like there hasn't been a big favorite that you really want to like pay for. Obviously Payne's contrarian. FanDuel, you could go as low as the Panthers. I'd be totally fine playing them for bare minimum against Burrow. Like he still takes some sacks and throws some picks. They're not. I think generally it's better to like go super cheap on FanDuel and then pay up a little bit on DraftKings just because like you're not getting quite as much salary relief. But kind of whatever fits your builds. There's no huge favorites. I'll have defense ranks up like later in the week, after we have these injury reports and like I see what I'm doing with the rest of my teams. Just a quick note here. We were talking about like tight ends, like pretty binary, like you're paying up, you're going mid-tier, you're going low. Like there's one guy at each kind of level. Like, so just kind of look through your 2v2s with like each of those levels, what it does for defense, and then like your last player in. Like that's kind of how you build your team. So you'll come down to like the last 2v2s and 3v3s. So once we have all that ironed out with injury news, it's much easier to answer questions, come Sunday morning. But, I think we're able to provide a pretty good rundown to get you guys started.
Yeah, I feel pretty clear it's going to be like, you're going to have tough 2v2s and 3v2s. Like they're going to be like very out there. So it's not going to be like, oh, like punt this tight end versus this. Like it's going to be I think there's gonna be a lot of interesting 2v2s and 3v3s this week. We'll see how it all shapes out. Obviously, we got that Raiders news that was big and out of nowhere. And hey, we could still have more news that comes out of nowhere that we are not expecting. Again, it's a big slate. And when it's a big slate, there's lots of options to kind of sift through, and there's more opportunity for news to drop. But Bryce, any final thoughts before we get on out of here?
I think that pretty much does it. It was a busier week with injuries, and there's still some to come out. So, I'll have all the cash stuff up for NFL by tomorrow morning, and then as always, updated throughout Sunday. And feel free to tag me in Discord with any questions. Shoot me a DM, whatever you guys want to do.
Yep. Same here. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out. And if you have decisions hey, should I play this many Panthers? Right. I had someone ask me something like that last week with one of them. It's yeah, that we'll answer. We'll help you out. Again, use that code RPS15, get you 15% off. And you also get the college football show, which was on the premium side today. And I don't know what else is going to become premium as the weeks go on. So we'll have to see. That's something for the big man, Tony, to answer for the people. But that's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks a lot for joining. For me, Mangone, and Bryce. We'll see you guys later.